Good day, everybody. Brian here from quantlabsnet.com. Today's video, I am going to talk about something a lot of people either are not aware of or are not talking about. I just posted this on my blog at quantlabsnet.com. What we're talking about here is something about hidden power of proprietary quant programming languages. These are some of the ways that Wall Street will lock in top talent. So what's happening is some of the top firms, we're focusing here on Jane Street and Goldman Sachs, but there's other ways firms are locking in their top talent in terms of quant career, HFT career, and whatnot, so they don't move to the competition. So what's going on is pretty well some of the firms like Jane Street will deliberately obscure you to only use certain proprietary languages in their systems and whatnot. So they do this to maximize the efficiency and lock in talent. So examples would include Jane Street with OCaml and Goldman Sachs with Slang and SecDB. So why do they do this? Well, they'll tell you their own methods, but I think what's more important is they'll talk about performance control and more importantly, the competitive moats to prevent talent from moving to another firm if they're using another popular language like C++ or Python. So this is how they, in a way, retain employees. So more specifically with Jane Street and OCaml, what they'll say is there's fewer bugs, better performance, blah, 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 blah. The cons are OCaml has nowhere else to go, making people effectively stuck at Jane Street. Goldman Sachs is the ultimate way to lock in top talent. So they have their securities database, SecDB, their own proprietary language, Slang. Um, Slang isn't just obscure, it's completely proprietary. So only Goldman Sachs uses it. No other tech or bank uses it. And it makes you feel if you had to leave, you're leaving years of specialized knowledge behind. Question is this ethical? It's not my place to say, but employees feel that they're being unfairly restricted, and it creates a technical serfdom where skills are owned by the corporations. The regulators may some way push back against these types of practices. Um, so workers will accept a trade-off, high pay for limited mobility, or they are willing to demand more for portable skills. So that's the choices you need to make. So Camel, it's an academic, French academic language, which is kind of like the secret for Wall Street. And again, with Goldman Sachs, the Slang and SecDB, powerful database in finance, but it becomes the ultimate career trap. So how does it work with Jane Street? Blah, 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 blah. I could go in this. Why do they use it? Again, as I said, they'll use it for performance and safety. It's a functional programming language. It's immutable, it has type safety built in. Might be valid. The language has a strong type system as well, but there's no competitors using it. Most firms out there will use Python or C++ or both. Jane Street employees left for a competitor, they'll have to rewrite everything in a different language, which, believe me, as you get older, can be a monumental task or laid off. And again, we're not even factoring in artificial intelligence. When an article I put up on how HSBC is now bringing out a new tool where they're going to pretty well at some point in their back office be able to basically eliminate all jobs in the back office uh, functions. Same with Goldman Sachs, where they're bringing out a new global universal assistant for most staff, I believe, for AI, using some, in my mind, very dated LLMs. But nonetheless, they're rolling these out, and those jobs will be highly affected by this. So this is another way how they do it. These firms have the right to do it, but you also need, if you're top talent coming out of a big school, top school, you need to be aware of these on your career choices. Uh, so for quant, typically you're going to be wanting to work at a Python-based firm, so you can jump from one to the other, be it a hedge fund or tech company. So Camel is a moat, making Jane Street proprietary strategies harder to replicate. I understand for the competitive purposes that I get, but just realize what you're getting yourself into when you join these firms. So Jane Street doesn't use OCaml. It dominates the OCaml system. They use open source OCaml libraries, core, async, incremental. They sponsor OCaml compiler development and hire leading OCaml researchers. Fair enough. But as I said, this is where Jane Street will use this for retention tactics. So for an employee who wants out of Jane Street, it becomes a very high cost to leave. You spent years mastering OCaml, its unique libraries, and proprietary tooling. Sorry. If you wanted to leave, where would you go? Other hedge funds will use Python or C++. The big tech like Fang companies barely touch it. Startups almost use functional programming at scale. So it's basically a career lock-in. If Jane Street's culture compensation weren't top tier, the opportunity cost of leaving would be enormous. So it's basically a sense of golden handcuffs. When you're making 300,000 plus for new grads and millions for senior quants, there's no reason for them to leave. And they really can't cash out because where do they take their skills? So they hire people and based upon notoriously difficult, always choosing math Olympiad winners and functional programming enthusiasts. This becomes a tribal identity. So as a result, these proprietary tech stacks become a norm. So, for example, as competitors, Two Sigma uses Haskell, another functional programming language. Citadel, they have their own in-house programming language. I don't know what it is, but that's what it claims. Jump Street relies heavily on customized C++. But at least with C++, you could take it elsewhere, and anyone who is out there hiring knows that you're using a C++ and you're from Jump Street, they'll probably put you on top of the list. So there's a trend here. Quant Firms see programming languages as a strategic asset, not just tools, and that's to keep their top talent locked in. So this becomes a dark side of the specialization. It limits employee mobility. If the firm ever faced downsizing or AI, as the other example, the OCaml switch specialist would struggle to transition. One of the ways to always choose is you could always become self-employed. That's where I am. That's why I'm building up my community with my memberships. Always remember that as well. I've now demonstrated the capability of the advanced modeling with LLMs, the popular ones you already know, and what they can do and what to build out with trading front ends for a variety of trading assets. I just put up I'll talk about this in a little bit, but I did put out a survey on my YouTube channel, meaning, um, are you wanting to learn and knowing that you also need to know futures and options in order to use that as a baseline for a career in quant and in HFT, because that's where most of the firms trade anyways as asset classes. Okay, so coming back to this, will other industries follow this? So if, let's say, Google mandated Dart for all backend systems, Facebook required hack or their PHP variant in order to get promoted, or Apple forced Swift on all internal tooling. That could happen. Maybe it's already happened. I don't know. But finance is a closed ecosystem where tech thrives on open standards, and it's the idea of deliberate skill siloing is worth watching. And this is from a competitor and competitive set of reasons. The question is this genius or exploitive? Depends upon what side you're on. If you're in the upper management of these firms, worried about competitive strategy ideas moving to another competitor, I get it. I understand it. And somewhat I respect it. But there's always the other side. So Jane Street, the OCaml, this strategy is brilliantly effective. It can boost productivity, protects the IP of the firm and intellectual property, and locks in the talent. That's what they want. But it also raises, as I said, the ethical questions of, is it fair to limit employees' career options? Should companies be allowed to create the walled gardens of skills? Will this lead to a fragmented, less portable tech workflow? I think it already has. And with AI, it's making it worse. Jane Street quants seem happy. Why? Because they're happily fed by being happily paid. They're working on cutting edge problems and insulated from poaching. Fine for them. If that's what they choose and want to be staying in a career and become a Jane Street loyalist for all life, like what they do and expect in Japan. But as more firms add language based retention tactics, the debate becomes over tech talent sovereignty only grows louder as things like AI come about. So it is an arms race, not just about technology, but the top talent coming out of schools. OCaml is Jane Street's secret weapon. So the question becomes, would you want to work at a company with an obscure language that uses this as a retention? And let us know in the comments in the videos or the blog itself. Now, how does Goldman Sachs use this? How Slang and SecDB lock in talent and protect their profits and their competitive edge. So again, you have hedge funds like Jane Street rely on the obscure OCaml. Now Goldman, one of the larger investment banks, has its own arsenal of homegrown tools, Slang, SecDB programming language, and SecDB securities database. It's a dual purpose. From Goldman Sachs' perspective, it boosts efficiency and creates an inescapable moat around employee skills. They built the database, including an entire ecosystem around it. The firm means a banning of hard earned expertise. So if you decide to move away or they lay you off, the strategy seems brilliant, limits again the employee mobility. It is corporate control, and it is pretty well the future of tech. Um, so basically, we have the database that powers Goldman Sachs proprietary risk management and trading platform. If it works for them, it works for them. It was developed in the 90s. It's optimized for real-time data, allowing traders, risk managers, and sales teams to use it. Gives them price complex derivatives, run real-time risk simulation, and analyze counterparty exposure. So this database is tailored to Goldman's exact needs. Just be aware, you work at that company, this is where you might actually end up. And it removes their, they don't need to have off the shelf solutions like Bloomberg or Reuters. So the language that binds all this together is a customary programming language for SecDB, which is Slang. It's domain specific language designed for financial modeling. It's built-in financial functions including Black-Scholes Monte Carlo simulation. You can get that pretty well anywhere with C++ or uh, with um, Python, and you can code generate yourself. I've shown it many times. Um, and you can create seamless integration with a SecDB, and it's a high performance for execution. So it's nowhere near as mainstream as Python or SQL, meaning Goldman developers who master it can't easily transfer those skills elsewhere because no one else uses it. So they built their own stack. So they probably do, well, Goldman does trillions of dollars in trades. Um, Here, they don't want to have vendor lock in, no reliance on Oracle, Bloomberg, as I said, optimized performance, customized for their own, no bloat for general tools. And it's a tighter security where nobody can reverse engineer it. Gives them a competitive advantage. So it gives them arbitrage opportunities with advantage quickly. Um, Slang and SecDB maintains an edge. Competitors can't replicate these models. Employers can't walk out the door with portable experience. So the talent retention is through this obscurity, no different than Jane Street on OCaml. Slang is a golden handcuff. Again, another golden handcuff. And we've already shown other ways banks use for these golden handcuffs. There are few exit options. I mean, if they lay you off, you're going to have to go out and relearn all the current new ways of doing popular languages like Python, Java, C Sharp, or C++. So other banks don't use Slang. They use Python, Java, C Sharp. Big tech has no use for SecDB. Quant funds prefer more mainstream languages. So if you decide to leave or get laid off, you're less poachable. So Slang and DB is used for retention purposes. As I said, if you're an employee, it becomes a high switching cost for you working in these fields. So let's say you spent 5 years in either or Slang or SecDB. If they leave, they must relearn standard tools, Python, SQL, and so on. Goldman's specific knowledge becomes nearly worthless elsewhere. That is why knowing the trading is more important than the technology, more important than the math, because it's those proprietary trading ideas, they stay with you. Um, so the career lock-in is something to factor in for employment at these firms, and you need to think twice before you jump in. So what happens is you get your Goldman only skill set. Slang is only useful inside Goldman Sachs. Okay. No competing bank will pay a premium for slang skills. Understand that. No competing bank will pay premium for slang skill sets. But if you're coming out of Goldman Sachs, and I've talked about this before, if you're coming out as a portfolio manager from Goldman Sachs with the profit, with the alpha generation, you bet those banks will pay top premium for those skills as a portfolio manager. And forget a manual trader as well as a human, because, well, AI can do that as well. So as a result, employees cannot easily transition to places like hedge funds or other tech firms. Here's the problem. It becomes a strong tribal identity around these technologies. The problem is if you ever meet these Goldman Sachs employees, they're pretty arrogant if you have not met any of them. Uh, so all new trainees become extensive users of this language slang. It rewards deep expertise in these proprietary tools, and it fosters a sense of exclusivity, which is fine, but you better be paying top dollar, which they pretty well don't. So this becomes a psychological retention thinking you're part of an elite group. So there's broader implications for this. If the general trend is wanting to have proprietary tech in the finance, these are further examples. JP Morgan has Athena. When you go into JP Morgan, you're learning about Python as a course. It's open source on GitHub. It's its own Python-based platform. So you have to learn that and the programming of it. Morgan Stanley uses its own risk system. Here's the scary one for the top firm out there, the highest paying. Citadel has custom built languages for trading. So you're back to square one, even working at Citadel. I'd like to know more about Citadel, but I'm sure I could find it. But just knowing that means you can stay independent. And if you can, trade and be independent and work as basically a self-employed person and be part of a community like with what I got. So the banks see proprietary tech as a competitive necessity, not just for a cost saving. Here's the dark side. It limits employee mobility. Um, yeah, sure. It ensures loyalty back to the bank, but it also traps them. If Goldman downsizes, Slang experts have few fallback options. Tech workers may fall behind the industry trends like, as I said, cloud and AI. Will this spread beyond finance? So, as I said, if Google mandated Go for all promotions, so you want to get promoted, you got to know Go. If you want to work at AWS or Amazon, you have to look at only AWS specific languages. Same with Microsoft as well, if you want to learn and move up in Azure only tools. So the tech remains more open. Finance's approach could inspire other industries to be like this. So, as a conclusion, Goldman Sachs, their Slang SecDB is an ecosystem. It's a master class in corporate strategy. For them, it boosts efficiencies, no off the shelf tools, matches it, protects their intellectual property, and it locks in talent so employees can't leave without some form of opportunity penalty. But here's the disadvantages and ethical concerns. Employees being unfairly restricted. Does this create a two-tiered workforce, portable versus trapped skills? Will regulators ever intervene? Probably not. Goldman approaches remains wildly effective for them. They pay accordingly, but then if you want to move on, you're going to have some really limited choices, if at all, and then therefore you're trapped. So tech talent becomes more aware of these tactics, the backlash will grow. And with me putting out this and you spreading things like this, people become aware. One thing is certain, Slang, SecDB are Goldman Sachs move, and they're not going anywhere. Question comes back to, would you work at a company that uses a proprietary language like this or tech? Let us know in the comments. Over and out. Oh, let's talk about the survey as well. So as I said, when it comes to the asset classes, which is very important, if you're in career, your ultimate goal is to move into portfolio management. If you know the technology, if you know the quant math, your ultimate goal is to go into portfolio management. It's the highest paying, it's the most transferable. It is also a way to maintain your own team of tech. In this day and age with AI, maybe you don't need a team. You can use tech and AI to develop your own solutions. But regardless, whatever you trade, it's pretty obvious to me that futures and options is the only way. It's the only way to learn. So the question is, are you wanting to learn advanced futures and options? And is this the gold standard asset set of classes for quant and HFT careers, wherever you work? So you have the 4 choices in the YouTube survey under my post at Quant Labs channel. I want to learn futures and options. Hey, I've got a course on it. It's a 5-week, very advanced, very deep course on it. The other thing is, I believe futures and options F&O is fundamental to advancing my quant and HFT career. I also believe the F and O is fundamental to advancing the difference here, my indie independent career. So you trade on your own using these skills, but you can still be part of a community like what I got. Or you can just answer, say, I'm not interested in any of this. All right, we'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.